Would somebody who's on Zoom just speak so we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Not getting any sound, so
There's something really faint.
You want me to zoom in?
Anybody hear me?
I
Still
think
talking.
it's picking up. I mean, Skylar's talking, we're just not hearing him. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I could hear some really quiet talking.
you say hi again?
Yeah. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Somebody
I'm
was
still talking. Nothing?
No, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. All right. I'll put it on mute again.
Good, great. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. I would like to call to order the Parks, Property and Streets Committee meeting on Monday, May 5th at 2:33 p.m. Roll call, please.
Berto, here, Bell,
Here.
Laskowitz,
Here.
Aaron's,
Here.
and Hobson.
Here. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
One quick question on the agenda. Sure. Bid reviews, don't we usually go to closed session or are these bids different?
These,
Bids are always open publicly.
They are, okay.
oh, it's a decision on the contract.
Oh, it's the contract decision. Oh, the
Okay.
bids, okay, got it, thank you.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any comments or edits or anything to the regular monthly meeting for April 7th or a motion to approve?
Yes. Page 3. Somewhere in the paragraph, starting on line 29 through 37. Could you also notate that Berto also was dissatisfied with the size and amount of stalls in the bathrooms?
Mhm.
Thought they were too few.
Anything else?
Anybody else? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Okay, comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. So we'll start with the public. Chris.
Have some prepared remarks and some items to pass out to the committee. Review. And it will be quick, keep it within 3 minutes.
Thank you.
This is to the Village Citrus Bay Parks, Property and Streets Committee. Village has done an amazing job the last 20+ years, opening up the Citrus Bay waterfront for public outdoor recreation, utilizing the generous support of the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program. In 2011, the village awarded grant funds to the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program, purchased property that was to be used for public outdoor recreation. According to the signed grant paperwork, if the village uses the funds, quote, inconsistent with public outdoor recreation, unquote, the village, quote, agrees to reimburse the department of any and all funds, unquote. In 2019, through a conversion of the original granted land, the village granted use of the land inconsistent with the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program that places the grant funds out of compliance. As a taxpayer and stakeholder of the village, we do not want to see the village have to pay back awarded grant funds due to improper use. We have asked each new village administrator since 2021 to remedy the situation with no action. In January 2024, we formally asked the village board for permission to research suitable options to bring the almost $1.5 million grant funds awarded to the village into compliance. We were granted permission to hire Rebecca Associates to review options. After a lot of work on their side, they provided the attached review and proposal of next steps the village should bring the funds into compliance. We are presenting this to the Parks, Property and Streets Committee as it concerns property within the village. As a summary of the Rebecca and Associates on page 2, I'll just kind of go through this quickly. With Knowles Nelson grant conversion background and proposed next steps, Rebecca Associates Inc. was contacted to review the Knowles Nelson grant program and to evaluate options and process for converting the existing Knowles Nelson grant in the village of Cister Bay. Rebecca staff completed the grant review, identified a potential conversion parcel, and developed a preliminary site plan. Two primary questions need to be addressed to confirm assumptions made by the Rebecca team. One, can the village of Cister Bay convert the Knowles Nelson grant from parcels 10 and 11 to parcels 11B, which is already owned by the village? Per NR 51007, Knowles Nelson grant conversion to parcel 11B would need to be approved by the DNR. The proposed area must be of equal value, acreage, and benefit as the parcel initially acquired and approved in the Knowles Nelson grant. And then item B, based on Rebecca discussions with Luke Roffler of DNR on February 21st, 2025, parcel 11B would be eligible for conversion. The conversion process need to be initiated by the village and process followed. Based on positive response to the Rebecca inquiry, the following steps were identified: update the village and initiate conversion process. And Rebecca goes ahead and outlines that process. We just want to present that to the committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have any other comments from the public attending today's meeting? Okay, do we have any comments from anybody that's zooming in? We do have a one letter regarding today's meeting, and this is from Terry Wolf at the Cister Bay Historical Society. Unfortunately, neither John or I will be able to attend the walkthrough today, but Julie knows what areas we thought might be a candidate for signage. The area by the fire pit next to the boathouse, especially good for maritime history of Cister Bay. 1, 2, the walkway to the north of Village Hall, possibly for more general history of the village. These are just thoughts and subject to those of the community. Since the last park meeting, I've made inquiries about signage costs, but don't yet have something to report. Okay. Having heard all of that, we move to discussion item 5A, and that is property lease agreement, Friends of the Ice Rink. And that is in our packets. Okay, so Julie's, let's look at Julie's comments here. Hold on one second. Staff was directed to work on a land lease for the ice rink. This past month, the attorney reviewed my draft and made edits. That would be Randy. Our attorney, Miles, reviewed it and is now with the attorneys again. Attached is the original draft. We are awaiting for legal edits to some items Miles had questions about. Shown below. These are the questions that Miles had. Should the lease auto renew? Should the termination clause have more detail about when a lease can be terminated? Should there be more specifics in the section about damage caused to the sports complex? Miles is here, and any comments that you'd like to make at this point, Miles? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. When I responded to Julie's first lease proposal, which was broad questions, our attorney was able to get us a red line copy of the lease agreement, but that we weren't able to send that until Friday, so it's not in the packet.
Okay.
I believe Julie emailed me back on Saturday, so that was forwarded on to Randy to consider as he's rewriting. Seemed like most of the questions I had seemed amenable, at least of Julie's review. The auto renewal is just, if we're gonna do it for 10 years, just getting language in there that says like our standard is like, we'll auto renewal unless there's some reason to cancel that. We also wanted to add further detail to there's a termination clause that basically said the village could terminate the contract with 90 days notice, but it didn't say like what would cause that. So we wanted language in there that like specified that it could be terminated if we weren't living up to our end of the bargain, basically, and that if the village thought to terminate it, there would be a remedy for us to negotiate in good faith to, if the village had any problems with how it was operating, for us to have a chance to address those before they would terminate.
Okay.
And then for damage questions, that was just, it was written in a way that made it seem like we would be responsible for any damage anyone caused out there, whether it was related to ice rink activities or not. So we had some language, and in the red line version that was sent back, again, not in time for this packet, our attorney spelled out the language that we could use in there. So those were the main points of contention. After talking to our attorney today, we did, we had that operating agreement proposal a couple months ago. And then we started working on this lease proposal, and the lease references the operating agreement.
Oh.
Our attorney said, you know, in the perfect world, we just combine those into one document for ease of understanding and everything. But if they are two separate documents, they should have the same timeline, so they match up. So I think in the lease agreement that Julie and Randy initially sent over, it referenced that would be signed in May and the operations agreement would be in August, in which case they would not line up. So if we do that, it does make sense to, and that's something I didn't catch initially, is just lining those up so you didn't have like agreements at different times that you have to figure out. So those were the high level things. I think at this point, going over the red line version is not something we want to do since it's not in the packet and on the agenda, I'm guessing, and you guys don't have that, but
We don't
one
have
thing Julie sent back to me was what she might suggest is that from this point, we agree in principle to that lease with the attorneys, as long as that the attorneys continue to work on it. And assuming that your attorney and our attorney agree, then it moves back for final approval. But
That's
that's,
back here.
I assume you probably the Parks Committee has to have a final review.
Yeah, and then
I don't know.
And then goes to the board.
Okay.
Right, okay. All right, so that would be next month.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
First, this is a basic one and I'm not sure who would know it. But in the agreement, we're referred to, the village is referred to as the property owner. Do they use the term property owner instead of village in case we ever sell the property? I'm just not sure why we aren't more specific about this being the village property. And we use this generic term property owner.
That's a question for,
Randy?
For Randy.
I suspect it's a boilerplate thing, because when you, in contracts, it usually says property owner, but that's a.
Well, yeah, in municipal or business contracts, you usually would be a little more specific, so I was a little surprised. But I've seen that before and I didn't ask. I
Mhm.
thought I would ask. It's not a big deal. I just was wondering.
Well, in the beginning of the agreement, though, line 2, it says between the village of Sister Bay, parentheses, the landowner.
So
Maybe
they defined it up front, so it's probably fine.
Yeah. So we're good.
And then the second question you answered, I was gonna ask. Should I have been able to see in that document that it had been reviewed by the village attorney? Because that was gonna be my question. Sounds like that version had been reviewed by the village attorney, but now we're on a iteration after this version that we looked at in the past.
Yes. Yeah, Randy saw it once, but then, so, and then it went to Miles, and then it's coming back with, with some
Okay.
edits, and then it'll go back to Randy, and then come back to us for final approval.
My other comment would be, and you kind of made the same comments. I'm surprised that it's not more specific in terms of the terms and conditions. Renewal, definition of terms, those sorts of things. On the positive side, it's very short and simple. But making sure the village is protected would be the concern.
I guess I think we could give some guidance on the auto renewal. I do think we should do an auto renewal, and I think it should be something that is auto renewed 1 year ahead. So on a 10-year term, you'd have to auto renew at year 9. So that you're not left with, surprise non-renewal on the last year. But so I've seen a lot of things do, and so if no action is taken, I'd like to see this renewed.
So Nate, I would agree with that, but there might need to be terms on the auto renewal.
I
As-
think, sure. So I think that was one of, I'm guessing, but I think that's probably one of the things that their attorney added.
I mean, when this thing is wildly successful and it's producing millions of dollars a year, the village
Sure.
might want a bigger cut down
Right.
the road 10 years from now.
Do you want me to read what our attorney put into that in terms of auto
Sure.
renewal language?
Sure.
Just to see if we're.
Yep.
This agreement shall automatically renew for a subsequent 10-year period, so long as the operator is in good standing hereunder, unless either party gives notice to the other of their intent to not renew at least 6 months prior to the end of the current term. Essentially, there is where Nate, you might make that 12 months prior. In the event such notice is given by the landowner, an operator desires to nevertheless continue with the agreement, the parties to agree to engage in good faith negotiations to find an alternative location or to otherwise address the landowner's concerns.
So there's timing in there. I think 6 months is fine, but we want to,
All right,
for both of us.
12 months does make sense just for long term.
And also on an ice rink, because
Yeah.
you're auto renewing it and, it goes up in August, like what is the point of that last few months?
And then the one last line is any renewal will be on the same terms and conditions as set forth herein unless otherwise agreed in writing. So we need to change the terms, just negotiate that.
Does anybody have any other question? Otherwise, at this point, we would be seeing their revised version. I'm sorry, the Friends of the Ice Rink, revised version at our next meeting, right?
I guess the question here, for the purpose of moving it forward, should the attorneys work on this in the meantime?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
hammer
don't
this
think,
out?
I don't think that there's any reason that they wouldn't. Yeah, sure.
So that's
I can
allowable.
talk to-
I'm
I'll talk to
asking,
Julie
I mean,
about
that
that.
would be what makes sense, that the two attorneys would talk
Yeah.
and they would come to
Mhm.
the point where they can both recommend to their client
Okay,
that they approve it.
I mean, I think,
so if both attorneys move it forward, it comes to us in a final version, we say yay or nay, and then I would assume it goes to the board.
And then the other question is the operating agreement. Do we want to weave that into this? As one agreement?
That's probably a question for, I don't know the benefits or lack of, or I'm not quite sure. That's a question for Randy, first of all.
Okay.
And because I don't think we have an arrangement like this with anyone else. We have an operating agreement with the SBA, but no lease. So I think, speaking for Julie, she'd want to get Randy's opinion on that. But I also don't, you don't want to hold it up.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, there's not a particular benefit other than just like streamlining
Yeah.
that I know. I mean,
Is it typical to have it split where like this lease is just, you're leasing it and then what you actually do with it and all the other agreements are totally separate? Because it seems like they're interdependent on each other.
if they.
lining them up, at minimum, we want to line them up, I think.
If there was multiple agreements for multiple facilities, then it might make sense, but. Do we really think that Friends of Sister Ice Rink is gonna start operating something else? That's when I think these happen. You got your master agreements and then it flows from there.
How time sensitive is the lease for you guys in terms of other things you want to do?
Well, the sooner we get it going, and it's still up in the air if we can get the construction moving this year, but to do that and sign agreements, we need that lease agreement in
Right.
place.
Mhm.
Um,
So the next question is, how close are you to, how close are we agreeing on an operating? agreement?
I have not gotten anything back from the village on the operating agreement.
Right, I don't know, I can't speak for Julie, I think we are with that.
I don't think there was a lot coming out of that meeting that was contentious. It's just, I think it's putting that into language. So I don't know if we want to say like, from your standpoint, if you want to direct staff and Randy to like knock that out with this.
Okay,
And my preference is, of course, we're gonna listen to what Randy's got to say, but if we can have this in one document, we should, because we have so many times in the village. Where we reference one document from another and we don't keep them
okay.
consistent, it gives us challenges down the line.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I do disagree. I think your operating agreement is what is expected of all parties. And then in the lease agreement, it references the operating agreement on what they're beholden to. So if something didn't happen or whatever, I just think two separate documents, instead of trying to wrap it all up, then you're referencing a section. Because do you really want an operating agreement / lease agreement? Okay, you think yes. I think that they should be split and just very focused and defined on what each of them mean.
Denise, I kind of agree with you. However, I think we're gonna hear from the lawyer that if you reference the operating agreement in the lease, they're mutually dependent. So if you're in violation of either, you're outside.
But to
But
rewrite it all at this.
No, I
point
agree
in
with you.
time,
I think what I'm
That's a
saying,
waste of.
I think
attorney's
in this
money.
document, you can reference the operating agreement, the specific revision number, and they'll be linked. And they're separate agreements. I bet that's the way they're gonna wanna do it, Miles. So it's, depending upon how you look at it, you can say, yeah, it's two documents, but they're linked.
I would agree with Denise in terms of workload, in terms of attorney fees, et cetera. So if referencing does the trick. Great. And then if they're linked, they're the same. This was also a timing thing. Nate, for you,
Yeah, I mean, I feel differently, but if the consensus is that, that's not.
Jerry,
So help myself understand a little better. Once this lease agreement is in place, what can the Friends of the Ice Rink do without an operating
Oh.
agreement? Like
okay.
nothing?
Well,
Do you
actually,
need
they
an
can't.
operating
It's a
agreement to
funding
do
thing.
something?
So Miles, do you want to comment on that?
Well, from the lease standpoint, that allows us to engage with a construction company and.
And you have the lease for the land in place.
The
That's
operate-
not in question. The operating agreement is.
The operating agreement was more specific to how it would operate once that rink is built. So it's more like that was more about like, say, November through the winter season.
What
But
about the rest of the year if it's leased year round? Will that be in the operating agreement about, I don't know, maintenance, mowing, whatever things happen when it's not an ice rink, if it's leased year round?
I think the lease is gonna be the lease. And the lease will have language in it that references an operating agreement. So both documents have to be there in order for either to be in compliance, is how I've seen this done in the past.
But the lease itself, even though it doesn't allow you to do anything, does let you move forward with engaging with construction and timelines.
Yeah, I can't comment on that.
But it also establishes that any kind of work that's done is not being done by the village, it's being done by the leaseors, by this entity, which makes things easier, cheaper, not cheaper, but, and in terms of, codes and things like that, and restrictions, am I right?
makes it move faster.
Right.
But I don't see any reason we wouldn't be able to finalize that operating agreement and the lease agreement at the same time. I don't think they're,
Okay, so I think we reserve a judgment until Julie chimes in, but if we can get the attorneys to do them together, okay. If not,
come back.
not, yep,
I guess the
Make any-
benefit of the lease first is that it is far simpler than the operating agreement and probably far less contentious. So from a
Yes.
timing perspective, it may be a lot easier to get this done and out of the way and then this.
I think that was
references
really the
operating.
thinking from the beginning too. Mhm. Okay, so I don't think that we need a motion, sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, Denise.
So on page 12, the fourth paragraph that starts, certificates evidencing such insurance shall be furnished to landowner on an annual basis upon request by the landowner. I would like that changed. I would say that should automatically be given to the village, not requested at time of renewal. Every year you have to renew your policy, pay for it. I don't think the onus should be, I think that's just part of.
The contract probably needs language which defines
Instead of upon
the
request.
annual
Correct,
renewal process. Yeah, it's gotta be written down someplace.
so instead of upon request, it's something that triggers on your end that says, hey, we gotta give them our certificates of insurance.
Insurance companies are really good about doing that if you just ask them, because I get those from other entities.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay,
And I think Jerry had a good point. That when it is not in use as an ice rink. What happens if somebody else wanted to do something there in the summer? Is there, would they negotiate with the Friends group?
Very good question. We've
Would
approached
they
this.
negotiate with the village? Would you sublease it? Because I do think that there could, depending upon what it is that you actually build and what the structure is like, it could be utilized for other things. And I think that we should walk down that path and see how we would deal with something like that.
Yeah,
It seems like if it's leased, like it's yours to do the things with, and in the operating agreement, it covers what those things are and if they're. Because we've talked a lot about the in-season, but I think the off-season needs to be covered.
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously approached this from a winter's perspective,
Right.
from an ice rink perspective.
Right.
We don't want to preclude anything from happening there the other 8 months. In fact, we're actively trying to make sure that those things can happen. But we have never approached it from a standpoint of like managing pickleball, so to speak.
Sure.
It does.
Because if it's happening on your leased land, you,
Mhm.
to me, it's you're responsible for it, and we cover that, what kind of responsibility that is in the operating agreement.
So it would be functions there. It wouldn't be pickleball, but it would be basketball and stuff like that that happens.
Well, you
Painting,
did mention pickleball.
sweeping, mowing.
Yeah.
So, and we did mention striping it for pickleball.
Mhm.
Right, right. So it sounds like.
So that's an open question.
Yeah, I think we have to discuss that.
I guess my
And then-
question, I mean, the concrete slab there, how often do you get inquiries of people wanting to rent it? I mean, to me, it just seems like people just go and play a game of pickup.
Well, there is a basketball coach over at Gibraltar that regularly rents it for
Okay.
clinics during the summer. It's not, every week, but
Yeah.
a couple weekends
Okay.
perhaps.
If it becomes
So-
pickleball, it'll be active.
If you think the easiest way to address this, and obviously you would talk with your committee and your attorney, is that outside of the winter season, or when you're utilizing it, would you relinquish it back to the village, that if there were other activities that wanted to take place there, you wash your hands of it? Basketball nets are erected if they're not already there, or are responsible for or the pickleball group is responsible for the striping of it or something like that, and just say, we want to do this, but even though we're leasing it, we don't want to be responsible if something happened during pickleball
Right.
or basketball or something.
Maybe that's a note I can give to Randy and our attorney. It's just like, is there language we can put in here that it's, let's say November 1st through May 30th? It's our responsibility, and then those other months, if like you just said, if it relinquishes back.
Mhm.
Because obviously, if come summertime, kids are playing out there and stuff, and they're not supervised. It's just like a park. It's just a village
Right.
park, so
And if
we don't
you're
want to be
leasing it,
responsible for
paying
that.
insurance on it, and, even though some of that wording still needs to be, figured out, like, what are we responsible for, what happens, what are those things, then that washes you kind of.
Yeah, and the last thing we want to have happen is like, we're responsible for it, but we don't have the ability to manage it, so now it's closed and people can't use it. Like, we don't want that scenario because
Right.
we're afraid of something happening. I think that would make a lot of sense if we could work
Like
out
you
that.
guys would be open to a scenario like you just described?
I mean, I think it's simple, I think it's clean, I think it takes you off the hook for any summer activities. Unless some attorney would tell me I'm dead wrong.
Yeah.
It just kind of seems like common sense.
Yeah, I think the only flip side is we want really clear language of, so just the scenario, Eric's out there mowing in the summer and there's some spigot for something for the ice rink that he hits. All the pressurization goes out of the lines. Now is the village on the hook,
Well, it's a
it
good
gets
question.
complicated.
Yeah, stuff happens.
then also to make sure whatever happens in the summer is compatible use, because there's a lot, the majority of the uses there aren't gonna impact that surface.
Right.
But there's some that could impact it, you would wanna make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, like we wouldn't want a situation where somebody thought they could drill into the surface or put a tent, like there are times where people will put a tent up and they put a tent. I mean, you gotta see it with your parking.
Yes, we do.
Same thing would be the case in the line, would be
Yeah.
like an SOPs of like if you're agreed to use this facility, here are the things you can and cannot do, and here's your responsibility if you do them.
That's where it could make sense, since you would be the experts on it, to maybe manage it the other, I don't know if that's in your thoughts. But since you know, like the layout, the equipment, how it all operates, to be able to develop that and then work with people. Or maintain it the rest of the year, but that's probably well outside the scope of what you were thinking originally.
Yeah, it's beyond the scope of what we thought. I think there's probably somewhere in the middle that we can meet on this that makes sense, but it's a really good question to bring up. To make sure we have that in the lease. So thank you.
Okay, so back and forth, hopefully relying on the attorneys to move it forward, so we see a final version next month. And still some work to do on the operating. Right? Anybody else?
Was there a reason that it was just to the boundaries of basically the concrete and nothing outside of it?
Mainly just for the purposes of the construction of the surface. It's all focused on versus a building that's also used for Little League and bathrooms, and then that would be it's sticky.
Meeting the warming house?
Yeah. Because a construction project in the first phase would be specific to that footprint.
Although the construction equipment spillover would be outside the footprint. We have to figure that out too.
Yeah.
Because it's likely during construction, a chunk of the soccer fields or the parking lot or something is gonna get, you know, as we see with the lateral, there's a there's a large footprint.
Kind of. We have to, that would be a good question actually for anybody that you're talking to that's considering doing this. Like how much space do you need,
Yeah,
you know,
I'll check with them.
find out, that's a good idea.
And we talked to Eric with supplied us some information about the electrical power out to that spot too, so we'll look into that as well.
Okay,
Well, we have a utility easement. And that's so people can, or construction, you know, if something were to happen, and dig up a pipe or replace something or whatever. Whatever our utility easement, I'm sure would be. Would apply here on how much space literally outside of the ring that you would need for construction purposes.
okay, anybody else? All right, thanks for coming,
Thank you.
and we'll hopefully get it resolved next month. Thank you very much. Next up is the Highway 57 trail. So you guys read the packet, so in it is, engineering bids, construction bids, based on the way that, the funding is happening, we can see the bids for, engineering, but not construction. And also the DRT must approve the company that will be doing the construction services, so our conversation today is to review the engineering bids.
Can I just ask a question for my education? I was surprised. I thought that there would be construction bids in there also. Why are there not?
It's the way that we are going about the, we're working with and through the Department of Transportation
And that's their
for this
project.
project, yep.
Well, it's kind of the backup process, right? Because the
Right.
first is they submit, but we didn't get any, they required that the engineering and the construction be different, but we didn't get bids for the construction. So there's some sort of, I don't know, I remember Julie explaining it, but it makes it so that they can, the engineer can construct it, but they don't have to tell you how much it costs as part of the deal. Because it was really,
They can bid on.
we're outside of the
whatever-
normal process because
Right,
nobody bid on it.
Because whoever bids on the design can also bid on the construction, I assume.
Yeah.
I
For
know
this
that.
special case, because nobody bid on the construction when we put it out for bid. At least that was my understanding.
Called it something.
There is a name for it, and that's why we went this
That was,
route.
well, that was the
Okay.
Brooks whatever thing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
It's a weird circumstance.
But at least it was an option.
Yeah. Dramatic difference in the two prices, if I read the proposals correctly.
Yeah, some of them were very expensive.
Yeah.
And some were much less. so.
Well, and there's more than
Right.
two.
Well,
Five.
yeah, 5.
Yeah, one was significantly low. Or I should say, one was significantly high. And that was Graph. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, the others weren't as dramatic.
They were pretty close. Mhm. And, a couple we're familiar with. So. And I just thought. I thought that. Who is it? Hold on a second. Was it Stantex? Yeah, I think it was Stantex. That wasn't itemized, am I right?
What Stanford's was, I don't know. I just remember theirs was, had a lot less material than the other.
Okay. Hold on. I see a proposed lump sum fee. I can go in and look at the detail, because I don't know, I don't recall seeing the detail. So we have Ari et al. Acon. Okay, do you have anybody have any preference one over the other? Anybody have any questions about one over the other? I had a question about data collection. Because I see data collection and surveys on a couple of them, and the expenses is in some cases wildly different one to the other. But I think data and survey is important. Do people agree about that?
I mean, didn't we take a lot of data that drove to us driving this project to begin with?
We did, but there still needs to be communication with, the folks that are affected by this. And then also
Which I thought all happened. And that's what resulted in us moving into the DOT right away for part of it due to
Right.
some property owner feedback.
Mhm.
And that's how we ended up in the DOT bid process. At least that's my recollection.
Well, I'm not sure that we have right away from everybody yet, but my other question was, and this is what, okay, hold on a second, it says, sorry, I gotta go back to the agenda, beg your pardon. Here we go. Okay, so in here, in Julie's note, beg your pardon, on page, I'm on page 16 in the packet. And it states, the DOT also set a schedule for us whereby construction could not be let for bid until December of 26. Meaning the trail wouldn't be built till 27. So my question would be, I understand we can't see the construction side of it, but on the engineering side, we think that in May of 25, those builds will be
Still valid.
right. So is this something that even if we say, or are we required at this point to do this right now? If a year and a half from now, if she's saying right now, we can't let these out for bid for construction anyway, for a year and a half. Why, I don't know. Department of Transportation schedule, so that's what we gotta live with. But I'm just wondering on these engineering bids if they will change. I don't know. So,
I presume that they're gonna start the engineering right away.
And then they would just have it in hand.
I don't think that they're gonna wait.
do we have somebody on Zoom?
And we have, Skylar and Hannah, please stand up.
Okay. Skylar, are you there?
Yeah, I am, and I can answer a lot of those questions if you. I've got a little more knowledge of the process since Stan Tech,
Great.
myself, started the original design of this trail.
Terrific,
Uh,
take it away.
Well,
So,
before you start, I just want to ask two questions.
sure.
The first question is back to the Parks Committee. I don't recall the size of the grant that we have to cover this expense.
It's like,
900,000.
900,000.
So we have 900,000 to cover the cost of this trail, and that 900,000 can be applied to both the design and the construction.
that's fine.
I can jump in there. I know the answer to that one.
Please,
So
go
yes,
ahead.
you have 900,000. The DOT reimburses you for the actual construction of the trail and also the construction oversight. The engineering bids that you see in front of you that actually have a price on them, that is not reimbursable by the DOT. So that comes out of your pockets directly. That's just how they run these programs.
And as I recall, we budgeted for that and utilized money from the DCMC from their sidewalk. They gave it to us and we repurposed it to do the initial engineering, which I think you did, Skylar, right? Like there was a start of engineering and then it stopped and I don't remember the reason.
Yep. So this whole process was I started I wouldn't even call it a conceptual. The design that you have in front of you from me is 90% complete. With a few more hours of work, I could get it out to bid to a construction company. At that point, you would obviously be on the hook for all of those fees for construction. So halfway through this process of creating these plans, we said, oh, there's this DOT TAP grant. Let's go for it, apply for it. We applied for it, we got it. So at the end of the day, you get your construction paid for, but your engineering process becomes more onerous because we have to jump through a lot of DOT hoops, such as archaeological, environmental, real estate acquisition type stuff to.
All the items outlined in the bid.
Yes, exactly. That's why the fee is larger than the initial fee.
Okay.
So if we don't choose you, do we owe you any money?
You've paid me in full, so that project is done and over. This is sort of like we're starting over new.
So how much have we paid you?
I think the contract was 22.5 or 25,000 on the head. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was right around there.
You said.
And you're right, it came from the
You're-
DCMC.
You're saying for a few $1,000s more, you can complete the engineering and it can go, and then we would go into the construction phase. Did I hear that right?
That was
Basically,
when-
yes.
Right, though, Skylar, like now there's extra stuff that has to be done because the DOT is involved.
I heard him say
Yes.
that you need to spend a few $1,000s more and you could finish that.
No, he didn't say money.
Well, he said
From my end,
More,
from my end of the engineering, I could finish off these plans for not much input, a couple $1,000 more on my time. Then we would put it out to bid and you would have to pay for the full construction. So you would then be on the hook for another $700,000 worth of construction for a trail and everything else. So what you're getting out of this process is the DOT paying, I believe it's 90% of that construction cost. So that's
That
where your true
requires
savings.
your re-engineering to start over, correct? Which is
Yes.
why we got the 78 whatever in the Stan Tech bid.
Yes. So I agree. It's a bit of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back type thing, but at the end of the day, you're.
Well, I want to challenge him on this. If we paid him 25, what, 20 something? What have we paid you?
22 or 25,000. I can't remember off the top of my head.
We
Let's say
paid you
25.
25,000 and you told us what we paid for was most of the work that needs to be done, including the additional requirements from the DNR. And you finished that work off for, let's say, $10,000 more. That's still lower engineering costs than any of these proposals.
It does not include the excess DOT requirements. The path that you're going down to get the DOT grant money requires more legwork, ultimately it's a federally supervised fund. And there's, I could run down the list here of all the like we said, archaeological. environmental.
Your bid of, in this deck of 77 or whatever it is, incorporates that work plus what you already did that we paid you for already.
Yes, basically. So you're looking at 100,000 if you added the fees, the amount of work I've already put into it, plus this DOT work on top. In real round numbers.
And roughly how many engineering hours go into the DOT work?
Many hundred. It's the DOT you're talking about approving the
DOT
grant.
requirements, roughly how many engineering hours are in that?
It's upwards of 350.
Thank you.
What it comes down to, Mike, is free money is never free.
No, I get it. But I think there was some confusion with the Parks Committee as to what the grant would cover. I understood it to cover this engineering cost also. But what I hear you saying is that the cost of the engineering is in the budget. We use that with dollars from where?
So DCMC had an agreement to put a sidewalk in as part of their putting in of their facility, and that would have been, they had budgeted 20 something whatever for it. And we looked at it and said that sidewalk on their side of the street to nowhere wouldn't really make a lot of sense. Let's utilize it to
Okay,
work
so we're
on the
just
sidewalk on the other side of the street.
We're reallocating a budget item
Yeah,
away
that's
from a
what,
sidewalk
that's
to
what,
this path.
yeah, sidewalk to path is what we did at that time.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Do we agree that that's accurate? Everybody's,
I wasn't here then, but I
Okay.
think so. I'm assuming so, yeah.
Denise, do you agree that that's accurate?
Which statement?
Jerry's.
But that's the money that we already paid
Mhm.
standard. So now we're looking at this, and I'm trying to, I know we had some money in the CIP for this in the future, but I don't know that it had this much in there. I thought we did, but I'm not seeing it in the most recent CIP. But that's a problem for another committee, I suppose.
So Skylar, that's why, I'm assuming you did a lump sum fee rather than, itemized, right?
Yes.
Who else is on? Oh, just you, Tech, okay, and Jess, right?
Do we have any experience as a Parks Committee or the board with this type of design work that would lead us to believe that we need to spend more than the lowest bid?
If you're asking, we do, okay.
What, can you give me an example so I can understand it? For a trail,
It's, you know, there were differences in the 5 different proposals that we received. I think they all worked on different projects. They all showed us a variety of trails and walkways and such. You can weigh, each individual can weigh things differently on what's important to them, or what they think is best for the village.
from what I saw of the drawing of the Highway 57 trail, and maybe someone can help me here. I don't think there was any bridges in it.
No bridges.
It was pretty much, and it's paved.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like the drawings and the examples that were references were much more sophisticated
They are.
in terms of, and they were impressive. But I think we have a simpler terrain we're dealing with.
Well, they also, most of them weren't trails necessarily,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, I mean, and they were, I mean, the larger communities were, but they weren't trails.
I mean, I was, in my notes, I had written that everybody's examples I thought were average, except grass. I thought their examples were great, but they were mostly around water.
Yeah,
And I think that's why they stood out a little a little differently.
And then there was the price tag difference.
Right,
Right,
right.
right, and a big difference, I mean, not everybody did hours, but a large difference in the number of hours needed.
I
But
mean,
again,
I have two people that I would feel comfortable going with. One is Stantec, because they, and they're very much in a low bid, with, Robert E. Lee, because Robert E. Lee, you have to add in that $8,000 to $12,000 if you read the packet, above and beyond their bid. Or AECom for 94.5. They are working on the Ephraim Trail.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a plus. Now, is it a plus for, $16,500? I don't know. But either one of those, graph is out just in my mind, just because of the price. McMahon, even though we love their, the work that they have done for us, I think we've been impressed with the architecture, with Mike, with the drawing. I think 150,000 is out of our price tag, so that leaves the other three.
yeah,
I guess I want to say, McMahon, I've been on some of those trails, particularly the CE trail. And it is, I don't think that is well done. I think there's a couple of things they could have done that would find a difference, but that trail in particular stands out in my mind of all the trails I've been on as a particularly egregiously designed trail. Against McMahon.
well, having not been on any of those trails, I think I would agree with Denise, and I did notice that they've done, Ephraim, who had vetted them and this experience.
Right, even though I don't know other than what they sent in the proposal if Ephraim has hired them and it gave them a leg up along with, a not too far off price.
Yeah, to me, the two that kind of stood out were Stantec and REL. The Stantec's packet wasn't super in-depth, but I know the work that they did engineering it already and the thought that they put into it and just working with them. So the unbid construction part gives me a lot of pause because that's like a blank check there. And I know historically working with Stantec, like they deliver a good product at a value. So I'd be less worried about that blank check of the construction project blowing up scarily. I liked what REL had in their packet. And we've worked with them and I think they've done okay unless Julie or staff would say otherwise with the other projects they've been working on for us. So I think they could both do it and they're both wouldn't have that scary blank check because I really liked the graph packet till I got to the price and I went,
Yeah.
wow.
Jerry, help me understand. I mean, if we choose one of these to do the engineering, we still go out to bid to the construction firms, correct? We're not making a recommendation.
It was my understanding that they oversaw both. Like it still goes to construction firms, but you still have the cost of them overseeing the construction project.
So your specific concern is, will they charge a higher fee? And we didn't ask for that in the proposal. So we, in the design component, we didn't get their cost estimate for supervising the construction.
Right.
Why would we not do that?
No, it's part of the Brooks and the way it had to bid. Weren't required to give us that info.
I thought they weren't required to give us the actual construction cost.
I don't know.
Correct.
That's correct. You can't give us the actual contract. That's correct.
So does the bid include overseeing all of the construction as well? My understanding was it didn't, but it doesn't. I don't know, maybe Skylar, you can clarify.
Yeah, so the two bids you have in front of you, you're looking at the engineering, which is the price, and then the construction oversight, which is the question mark price.
Okay, so the construction oversight is a question mark price. It's not included in the engineering price.
Correct.
And that's an eligible expense from the DOT though, that construction oversight and the actual construction is something we can get reimbursed up to 900,000.
Yeah, unless it goes over 900 and then we're in trouble.
But is there a reason why we can't, or we didn't ask for quotes on construction oversight cost either? Because they have all of their staff identified, they probably did our estimates already.
I thought it was part of the Brooks weirdness that
I
you
think we
can't.
probably-
I mean, Julie says we're not able to ask.
I don't think we can, otherwise we would. We can ask Julie.
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
available, But
she's probably right, I'm not questioning her,
I know,
She is right.
it's just goofy.
Yes, it is strange, but that's where that blank question mark, I feel comfortable that Stantec won't gouge us. And
Does
based on the work
Stantec
that
have
already
construction
happens.
capabilities? Could they bid on the construction also, or did they?
Don't know.
They weren't, I don't think I saw them in the construction.
I'm saying from the construction oversight question mark cost. Which is unknown. That we don't end up in a graph situation where it's like, oh, really? It was that much to oversee the construction? That was a lot more than we thought.
So we don't even have a budgetary estimate on the construction from anybody.
no. That's a constraint.
And Skylar, are you telling us that in your experience doing this type of municipal work under the umbrella of a DNR supervised project, we're not allowed to ask for that?
Correct. It's part of their, I guess it's a way to assure equality between bidders. You're not looking at price, you're looking at the value they can bring to the project. I agree. It's it's a huge question mark for you guys to have to shoulder. Yeah, but it is illegal for us to discuss price until you select a firm.
So our task is to first select the engineering firm. And,
I think it's a combo, so we pick both.
right, and both, right, and some, I think they all bid on both, I think, I don't remember, but, okay. So do we want to?
I'm sorry, this is the last question I'll ask. So we're sure,
You might have more good questions.
we're sure that the construction firm cannot provide their own oversight consistent with the design and incorporate that into their quote. So let's say we chose
Well, that's a different
Stantec here and we choose somebody else for construction. Could we add a specification to the construction proposal requirements so that we required the construction firm to provide their own production oversight, their own construction oversight?
That's not always a good guarantee.
I'm just asking if it's allowable.
Well, we bid the construction separately and nobody bid, which is how we got to this situation.
I know, but now let's say we choose Stantec, I'll just use this as an example, and we just take their engineering design. Now we have an engineering design that construction firms can propose and compete for.
Yep.
My question is, in order to make sure that we cap or control that cost, the construction oversight, as you just identified for us, is an uncertainty right now. I'm asking if we can make it a certainty by including it into the construction cost so that if we get 2 or 3 firms to bid, they've cooked that number in, which gives us a chance then to make sure we're picking a bid that's going to be under the grant valuation.
I don't think the DOT will allow us to alter from the criteria that they have already told us on how we had to request this information.
Right,
I don't think the grant would still remain eligible if we,
Okay.
otherwise, you know, that seems like a loophole that the DOT then would not give us the money.
right. Because it depends on how you interpret construction oversight. Does that go into the, which bucket? But it probably goes in the construction bucket, so we don't see it.
I mean, the screwy thing is it's unfortunate that municipalities are in a position where they have to deal with uncertainty around cost estimates.
By law required to do that.
It sounds like, yeah.
Well, it states here, this is her second to the last paragraph and what she sent to the, in the RFP, the construction services contract is subject to the Brooks Act, beg your pardon, meaning the village is required to follow a qualification-based selection process, and therefore bids, estimates, or other cost information for constructive services, which could be interpreted as construction oversight, shall not be included in the submittal. That's kind of, I think, an indication that that's how they see it, but there's no language in here that says what bucket it goes in, but it kind of feels like that's what it is.
Does Stan Tech have any other experience that we should be aware of, or are we following the procedures consistent with DNR requirements? Mask and Stan Tech, since they're on the line.
Yes. Yep. So far, I think you are following everything.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, we are also partnering with KL Engineering. They do a ton of these TAP grant administrative stuff. So it's not just us. I don't know if you caught that in the proposal or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
So as we look at the construction, we're kind of looking at a lot of the same documentation they provided, if they provided, and I think all of them did, if they provided information for engineering. So the same proposals, I beg your pardon, same examples of projects they've done before. So if we start, we're back to either, I think, and tell me if I'm not interpreting what we said correctly, but I think we're at either Stan Tech or
REO, wasn't it?
Robert E. Lee or ACOM. Denise, yeah? Everybody,
Yeah, I think it's Stan Tech out of those three. I think that's way above down to, but my preference would be Stan Tech of those three.
say with Denise, right? Guys,
I agree.
all right,
Yeah.
so Stan Tech is engineering. Congratulations, Skylar, pays to show up. Okay,
I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think
I think we need a motion.
Yeah.
all right, do I have a motion to wanna help me with the
Award the
motion?
engineering bid.
For the end, to have a motion for the engineering bid to, I'm gonna say this wrong, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Are we recommending or
To
accepting?
recommend or accept the engineering bid from Stan Tech and Associates, is that what do I have?
Let's
there?
recommend to the board, right, because we can't approve the board.
We can't sign.
Okay, to make a recommendation to the board that we accept the bid for the Highway 57 trail as submitted from Stan Tech
So moved.
Corporation, I think.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience with me. Those were interesting discussions.
Sure. Sure, you should run for office, maybe you could get this all changed. Come on. All right, so now we have construction, so. Construction, just reviewing who the candidates are, so we have ACOM. I think that's how we pronounce it, right? Or if somebody wants to speak up and just say, that's cool. All right, so we've got, again, no numbers, so it's a bit of a crapshoot. We have graph. Based on, I don't know if it's fair to say this, but based on their engineering costs, they could be pricey. McMahon, we have experience with. And I think I've always had good experiences with.
I'm sorry, I've got to ask a question here now. Are we,
You said.
I mean, I read the proposals and I thought that these proposals and examples were the construction contractors were actually wanting to construct it to our specification. Or is this just, or are we just approving? We've approved Stan Tech for the design work and we've recommended to the board Stan Tech to complete the design work and to act as the construction oversight.
But
And the
that's what we're
construction oversight,
discussing right now is the construction oversight.
okay, that's my question.
I'm not sure.
Not the construction.
Right,
Not-
that's my understanding.
Right, we're looking
Okay, I
at,
wanted to make sure, thank you.
correct. We're looking at, correct, as it were.
And I don't see a need to, like, if we're choosing Stantec for the engineering, I don't think it makes sense to split it, combine it, because hopefully there'll be some synergies there and how they do the construction oversight since they did the engineering.
Yeah, I mean, from a communication standpoint, that would make a lot of sense to me.
And this committee has experience and the board has experience with Stantec prior,
Oh,
correct?
yeah. Nate, do you have an opinion?
I mean, I think if we do Stantec, we should do Stantec for both.
Nate? Okay. So, motion, do I have a motion that we make a recommendation to the village board to accept the proposal from Stantec for construction of the Highway 57 trail?
So moved.
Second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Skylar, thanks for showing. Hannah, thank you for being here.
Skylar, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why the DOT says we can't begin until December 26th?
So your contract, it becomes valid in 2026. So that's the earliest you could construct. And that's probably something we should have talked about a little bit too, is the timelines for a lot of the reviews at the DOT are months. And there's a dozen of these reviews. So from our perspective, 2026 might even be a pipe dream to start construction. We're envisioning this more as spring of 2027, just because there are so many reviews and back and forth, and that won't change on which firm you select. I'm just giving you a heads up that this is a long process.
How
Thank you.
complicated the free money is.
So the key is to get in the queue with the DOT. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
So after this goes to the board and comes back, when do you think we'll see something from you here?
Are you asking? Are you asking me, Nate? So board reviews it. I assume at that point we'll enter into actual contractual obligation discussions just to get all that together. At that point, we'll start the process. There's a lot of prerequisite screening from the DOT for like archaeological environmental. So we can start with that and get that in front of them right away so they can clear us or tell us there's more work that we need to pursue.
I guess what I was wondering is like 6 months, a year from now, is that when we'll see something back from you? I mean, I know there's a lot of parts to this that we don't really have input on because it's jumping through hoops for state money, but I'm just looking
Exactly.
for-
I would say within 3 months, you will have some pretty solid answers on where we stand with a lot of the reviews. Within 6 months, you'll have a finalized plan set, hopefully, that you're looking at. And then we're just going to keep jumping through hoops to get through the rest of the approvals. Monthly updates, obviously. And there will be questions that arise here and there, especially with the real estate acquisition for other landowners along there. So there'll be a lot of back and forth.
Skylar, it's Denise again.
Yes.
Are we putting in electrical along the path?
So we have that within, we put that, as we put it together, we gave the Cadillac trail design to the DOT for funding, which was a concrete trail with electric service and light pedestals along the entire way, along with some activity stations, I believe. So yes, we have the option to do that if we pursue it.
Okay, thanks, Skylar.
You got it.
All right. Up next, we have 5C referral from the Housing Committee about a stormwater fence around the stormwater pond up on Ava Hope. So the background here is when we toured the pond area about this time last year, we thought about, we were considering doing possibly a playground over there. So I think everybody's familiar with this Okay, I drove by there yesterday, I think.
Yeah, we're looking at a connector trail from a potential playground to the 57 trail, which we were just talking about. And that's where we noticed the extra gardens from the end of that apartment complex.
Mhm.
And that there's really not a lot of space there to do much of
Do a trail,
anything.
I decided
Yeah.
against it. So I'm not sure how you guys feel about it. It does feel like a fence would be appropriate. It is a place that a kid would be like, ooh, that's cool. I don't know.
They do play in it.
Yeah, so what kind of fence do they use? If we put a fence around it? What materials, what do we do?
Well, where else is there a fence like this? Cause I mean, we have a wastewater, or we have a water retention pond by Niagara Ridge, and it's,
That's a good question, I don't know.
Right, there's a water retention at DCMC.
and but there's no fences around.
There's one over at.
Probably because there's no kids
Scanned.
living nearby.
Niagara Ridge there are.
That's true. Then I think, I mean, Julie not being here, we could certainly pull some things up that look, because it's in people's backyards, so.
Do we think we need a fence? Like, I know it's a theoretical, maybe it would be good, but for the neighbors there, that's just gonna go right across their back porch and will rip up people's.
It's not that close, is it, to a back porch?
Yeah,
really?
it's
Was it
it's
that
really
close?
close to the back. That's why we couldn't even fit like a trail through there.
Does the village code allow it?
Boy, I didn't even really,
It does, you can't have chain link. It would have to be something more of a
Yeah.
decorative fence, which is going to cost a whole lot more. A couple of years ago, when somebody moved in to the Shoals, a single mom child had called me and was telling me that, the kids were playing, in the pond. It's a big hole, but it's fun. There's
Yeah.
rocks and dirt.
oh, totally.
And I asked them at the time to write a letter. The village has never received a letter from them or anyone else that I'm aware of pertaining to this. The pond was always there. Yes, it's village property. Yes, the village does have deeper pockets than the shoals. But what I was saying at the time is, if the Shoals is concerned about it, then maybe they should put a fence on their property. And they could, that being one option, and so I think this is not something that we will decide today, and there's consequences all across the board on the costs.
I get that, and I don't know if it's even necessarily just the Shoals, it sounds like from her note, it could be. I think remember, this is a housing committee, and I'm not sure that, I know Marissa's on the housing committee, but I think there's also multifamily developments around there, but either way. I don't know what the expensive, but yeah, it's gonna be expensive.
It was some time ago, but I was talking to Lauren had mentioned something. Are you guys really thinking about putting a fence back there? I don't think it was you particularly positive. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, but are you really thinking about putting a fence back there?
Oh,
I mean, she's both on housing and managing the Shoals.
Yep.
I think that I don't want kids to go and get hurt playing by this pond, but at the same point, I think there's more ways to dissuade people from going into playing by the pond than simply putting up a fence. And I think to your point, Denise, is it something the village needs to take on? Because not everything out there is something the village has got to take on, and if it's that big of an issue for the Shoals, then at minimum, we should be looking for the Shoals and the other apartment complex by there to help with that. At least the maintenance of it, because it's not just gonna be the installation that gets us, it's gonna be sending somebody out there to clean up the fence. You're gonna see garbage get trapped in the fence, but like it does, and it sits out there over winter.
Mowing, edging.
Yeah. It's the long-term thing that's gonna get us. It's not just building it. But
And where do you put it? I mean, that water is gonna vary dramatically.
right. It's not real high now, but how often does, would utilities or somebody need access to that pond? Anytime?
I don't know that utilities
Ever?
ever need access.
No one, ever. Okay, I'm just wondering. All right.
Is there
So,
any drain out of it? Is there a drain? I mean, that would be where the danger would be if there's a drain. And then
No.
I see two drains into
it's
it.
just retention, it's just holding.
Yeah, letting it drain out slowly.
I mean, has anyone here, I can't think of a case where I've seen around a public retention pond offense.
So in Austin, when I lived there, there were a lot of retention ponds that were
Yeah.
fenced like this. And typically, there would be a couple of loose boards and then kids would pop through the loose boards and play in there. Totally unsupervised because the fence blocked all view. So it almost caused the opposite.
Yeah, it encourages
safety.
them to be. I mean, do we get an estimate on the fence and then make a decision based on that, or do we just say,
I think we make a decision on it
okay,
first, not based on a price of a fence.
okay, so what are the considerations?
Especially because we don't have any other fenced around here and there's plenty of retention ponds in this village.
And we've not, I don't think had any accidents, I don't like thinking like that, but, okay, so this kind of consideration is either financial, it's safety, it's, you know, what have we done before, and we've not done anything. And
I
so
don't think
far
there's
it's been okay.
precedence and I don't think there's, at least to me, it doesn't appear to be a clear need.
Okay, I think the only person we haven't heard from is you, Mike.
I agree with what Nate, Denise and Jerry have all said. You know, there's risk in walking out your door every day and. I think, you know, we could put a sign up to remind parents to keep the kids away, but I don't know that you want to put a fence up. I think it could cause more problems.
I have to say that because I'm kind of. I don't know if we talked about that, but, all right, so I
What-
think,
What I'd actually thought about is you've got some various aquatic plants that they put in there around the edge of the pond. If they grow up tall enough, it is not very inviting to go to the edge of that pond then. Or you have something on, right on the edge, still on the land. Either way, I think that's something that might be worth doing. But I also think we should hear from the Shoals and, the other apartment complex and see how they feel about it.
well, I think we should go back to the housing. Here's an option. We can go back to the housing committee and what certainly they would know. And let them know that it was consensus that, we not do this. And we can gather more information, but at least let them know and see what their response is and what their comments are. Is that agreeable? They're the ones that are suggesting it. People on there are Marissa, it's also Patrice who's chair, Julie, and then some folks that, who are very capable as it relates to this, but don't live here, that doesn't mean anything. But I mean, very capable people from Habitat and we have a capable person raising their hands, yes.
I was gonna say, so I live in Stony Ridge, which is right over there as well too, and I can talk to some of my neighbors too and see kind of what they think. I've never thought that it looked dangerous, but that's just my opinion, don't put that in notes.
Well, in the,
Speaking as a, but yeah, I think I'm gonna talk to some of my neighbors too to see what they.
well, you know, moms talk, or any of the moms like, oh my God, that thing is, yeah.
I've never heard about
I mean,
it, but it doesn't mean that I know everybody and I don't know every parent.
Yeah.
there.
I think if it was
But-
horrible,
I
horrible,
would-
we would have heard something by
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Well, we certainly have
And
concerned
it's
neighbors
also-
over there. We got the whole petition about the park there from the neighbors there, so they know how to reach out.
And the other thing too is children won't be going in it if you are the parent watching your child instead of just saying, go play in the street.
And to Jerry's
My
point,
mom
like,
said
what
that.
kind of fence is this gonna be that's actually gonna be kid proof?
I mean, nothing's really kid proof these days. I mean, kids can, when there's a will, there's a way, they're gonna find a way.
Come on, forever,
What?
forever, don't go there, let's go there.
But who knows, maybe once a playground is there, maybe they're thinking if a playground's there, more kids are gonna be in that area. But that could be a.
Okay, we're overthinking this.
Sounds like you cross that bridge later.
So it's consensus that we will not build this fence, however, we can communicate this, okay, to the housing committee.
I mean, just reading the state statute, it doesn't look like it's a requirement.
If it was, there'd be.
Yeah.
There'd be one there
Oh,
if it was.
There'd be fence there, yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on to, let's see, 5D, dark sky initiative, state highway streetlights. So Julie sent us a lot of information regarding this. And, I'll be honest, I didn't have time to drive around and look at some of these places at night to see what it looked like. Did anybody else?
I did not.
Okay,
I tried to mentally picture them.
how do you mentally picture?
Just
what it
remember
looks like?
being through there and it was dark.
Okay.
I would like to postpone this.
I agree, yeah.
So I can go to these intersections,
Me too.
because I don't even know how 27,000 lumens is even comparable to 135 lumens.
It's
So that's a watt, I think that's
That's not
supposed to be
half.
watts. Is what, cause I saw that as well, like, I think that it's saying 135 watts.
It is. it's
Cause that's
lots.
roughly comparable for HPS to
You're right,
LED.
it was confusing. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so we will table this until next meeting and ask everybody.
And if we could
Drive
ask
around
that
in
it
the
be
dark.
updated with the actual wattage and lumens, just to.
Sure.
that
In case
would
there
help
is a
clarify.
mistake
I
here.
assumed it had to be a typo too, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll add that.
Unless it was half, like 13,500,
Mhm.
but yeah, I just don't.
Okay. Okay, up next is, 5E, consider Jayco Management offer to install sprinklers at North Bay Shore Drive and Mill Road. Okay, you can see Julie's, cover letter here, very simple. Eric has indicated we have no sprinkler system here. If approved, it's recommended to be in place, regarding maintenance and repairs and so forth. So I would imagine there's some kind of an agreement that we would want to get, established.
so would they maintain, repair and pay for the water, or is that they
Well-
install it and we'd have to talk about it later?
Well, it says if approved, recommended an agreement be in place regarding maintenance, repairs and costs. So that would be an agreement.
Which was ask Chris.
Yeah, no, we're gonna be watering the other areas, figured we might as well water that as well, just because it's gonna look better.
Okay, so we
Be a nice
can, we
gesture.
can send an
We would-
agreement your
we would-
way and,
Yeah, we would pay
Move
for it,
forward.
install it, and
okay,
then happen, we could,
okay.
And what area are you gonna sprinkle?
I think, going maybe in, hoping to catch the whole area that's highlighted there.
Is that's the green color?
Yeah,
space there?
that's owned by the.
So the
village.
corner,
Yeah, the corner, yep. Currently, right now, is with the village.
So it's just the corner.
the other
It's
property's
not,
already yours.
it's not around the fire pit or,
The whole lot, right?
No,
You're gonna-
Every parcel.
Yeah, we're, I don't think we need approval for that, we're gonna.
They're doing their.
You're watering your own
no,
grass.
you don't need approval for that, but that brings me to my question. If you're putting in a sprinkler, are you not developing those 3 lots?
No, instead of paying someone to go out there and sprinkler it, you might as well have somebody can do it automatically. No, that is not correct.
So there's a utility easement, I believe, kind of where the
No,
sidewalk.
that's not correct. You still plan on developing
Yes.
those 3 lots? Because soon someone will be talking to you about planting street trees. Heads up.
So there's a utility easement, I believe, where the sidewalk is.
Yes,
So what happens when we tear that up, Chris?
Oh, and there it is.
Okay, I mean, like, we're not doing it for fun, of course, but
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, the next year, even this summer, it's like, you pay someone to sprinkle on, because it should be sprinklered. It's gonna look horrible. It's hard to keep up on.
Do they drill under the sidewalk?
It's hard to do it.
I mean, that's plat, that's not that big a deal
Not
anymore.
hard to do it.
no, I just want to make sure that you were, I'm sure you knew about that utility,
why
but
we're
you
here,
could say
yeah.
it in there.
Exactly, yeah.
So the idea is, and if I got this right, Chris, you're gonna water your property. The village has a corner piece there that would look a lot nicer watered matching yours.
Right.
And this would be, what expense would the village be responsible for?
This, no. we're just offering to do it.
And you're gonna pick up the water utility bill?
Correct.
Having a hard time seeing any downside on this.
Yeah, I don't have any concern.
He's just looking for permission on this. I mean,
Yeah,
this
if
is-
we were gonna do it, I thought well, we
I-
better bring it in front of the committee just to make sure we had approval, so it wouldn't down the line.
We plant trees there later, they'll grow better.
I don't, this is not in perpetuity, I would. just-
I know,
Now, right,
it's
right, I don't want
a
to say we're-
sprinkler system is not a capital investment.
Exactly. Huge gap.
So
I shouldn't downplay your cost,
Thank
it's a very generous offer. I'm sorry.
So, do I have a motion to make a recommendation to the village board that we enter into an agreement with Jayco Management to install a sprinkler system on village property at the corner of Mill Road and 42?
do we say we want an agreement or we just want to offer permission? Because I don't know that we actually need a formal agreement and
Julie's saying we need an agreement in place regarding maintenance, repairs, and cost.
How about we do a proposal? Because an agreement, you know, you're talking about an attorney and all sort of things. All we're asking for is
Okay,
for approval. of the
proposal
village to say, hey, we're
regarding
gonna-
maintenance, repairs, and cost.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Sure.
I don't know if she needs agreement or proposal.
And I guess I can understand what she's saying in an agreement, because we do need to delineate a couple things on there, not to make it more formal than it has to be, Chris, but. If we make a recommendation for an agreement, then it goes to the board. If we make a recommendation for a proposal, then it may not. It's not going to the board as an agreement, it's then might take another month.
She said it needs board approval.
Let's recommend it to the board and then Julie and I can hash out what it goes to the board. And I think general consensus is a good idea.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, Eric has, I don't know, is Eric online? Yeah.
Yes.
He's not. So Eric, has submitted his, report. One thing that, and I can follow up with him, but the sewer lateral project out of the sports complex, I did go and look at it yesterday, and I did talk with Jeff Pfeiffer, who has also talked to Eric, because the bays open on Sunday, which is earlier than they normally would. Nonetheless, so they're gonna keep in contact with each other, and to make sure that, to decide whether or not the, parking lot closest to the ice rink needs to be closed for the base game. Because if it's looking the way it's looking now, you won't be able to walk from that parking lot over to the base game. So the parking will all need to be on Mill Road or, in the base parking lot or, on, I don't know, I guess probably Woodcrest, but the other thing too is that there probably won't be water there. So that's why the porta potties are gonna be there, and then Jeff said they'll, for washing dishes and stuff, if there's no water, probably not gonna be water at the concession stand. They'll take whatever they need to wash at home and not have to wash dishes there, so. They're playing Colberg, it's Mother's Day, they think they're gonna get probably 100 cars. They don't know. So,
Should be a good game too.
it is what it is, yep. A rematch of the championship. So that's what that is. Any other questions on his?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
Number 3, just a typo, the county come through.
All right, came through. I didn't see them. Did they come to village streets or just?
Yeah, I can tell.
I didn't see it in my mind, but it doesn't mean, okay, typo, got it.
And then, why are we hitting bedrock? Is Skylar still with us?
No,
Were soil borings done? Because this is a problem. This
Well, Jeff
was
said-
not anticipated,
Yeah,
and I'm sure the guy who's doing the work is going to end up losing money because he has hit 10 feet of rock.
mhm.
And I'm just wondering, did someone err by not doing any borings in this area? Did we do borings? Just didn't go down far enough? I think,
So we need to do some research on that,
yes,
because they were working. I was at the dog park.
because this was supposed to be so
Yeah.
quick and so easy.
They were working like Friday night.
They're
and they were
working,
working Saturday
yep,
afternoon, they were working a lot. And I guess Jeff was talking to one of them and said, man, this is like rock.
Yep.
It's a lot. So. Okay, so we can find out. If they didn't do bearings, then what recourse? I mean, soil borings, what recourse do we?
I guess we have that conversation with our engineer.
Yeah. Because whomever is doing the work out there, I'm assuming it's taking a little longer. I know it is.
A lot longer,
Okay,
a lot longer.
okay.
And they reroute.
Well, at this point, it's a little late.
Well, I've seen them loop around it. I mean, I don't know how far.
I think they're pretty far. But there's no way, I tried to cut through to see, okay, maybe we could cut through, like, on the other side of the warming house, it's closer to where the fire pit is at the ice rink. I tried to walk through there and there's rock, I mean, 6 piles, 6 feet tall.
Is JF doing this?
I think so. I think maybe. I don't.
I don't think,
They did the excavation. I don't know if they're doing this.
And the Parks building is about a
Because
month.
how deep
behind.
do we have to go? Do we know? Just curious. Forget it.
well, because it's gravity fed,
Yeah,
we're going
yeah,
deeper the farther
yeah.
we get to the plant.
I heard they had a lot of dirt right on Woodcrest. Far more than they expected. Or they don't need it.
Okay, broadband update, I sent you, I'm just sorry, if there's any other questions on Eric's report? Beg your pardon. Okay, now I'm on administrator's report, disappointing that we didn't have anybody for a volunteer day, but first time we did it, so we need to do better next time, we will.
Yeah, I apologize. I had a wedding that day.
And I was
would've
out
liked
of
to
town too, I wasn't here,
I worked.
I
Thank
think
you.
maybe if
That's
we did
very
it,
nice. Wish I could have.
then we can talk about the date and do it.
Give me a makeup day.
Announce it further in advance. So Julie did the follow-up that we requested for the concession stand. As far as, the broadband update goes. So. She states in here, 3-foot tall orange poles, the orange poles are 5 feet tall. And I showed you guys photographs when I superimposed them on homes on Cherrywood. So, and then everybody got a handout that basically states that there's no universal specifications in Wisconsin that dictate the exact height, color, or size for these. So we need to do, some follow-up.
And so what is the purpose of these? Are they
They're
like the
markers.
big green electrical boxes that we see throughout town?
It's a
No,
marker
these
for
are
fiber.
posts. If, at our last meeting, when the company was here, they explained. These are, if you've seen the pictures, they're over 5 foot tall posts. They're white with a bright orange top. And what the lady at our meeting, this might have been when you were not here. They explain that they are there for service people to identify. They have a number on them. They're pretty much at every driveway. And they
Are
are,
they permanent?
yes,
And
And
they
This is one on here.
they're supposed to protect the box that's in the ground where the joints, where the connection points are now. And I know in his former life, Nate probably knows more about this, but the boxes are similar to the ones that the sprinkler services put in Bailey's, where they have one on my property. They didn't really bury those well, so I can see where if a truck or something would run over it, they could crack, but they got to backfill them properly. But they're set so far off the road. The only thing I can think of is they gotta be there primarily for service identification, which I can't understand why they can't use the street number of property. So I mean, I'm
Because
against, these things are really ugly.
I would cancel the whole contract based on Louise's picture.
I mean, they're really, I'll show,
This is
I have more
not what we
pictures.
want our community to.
I
Well,
agree.
The other comment too, and Julie's made this as well, because she had hers installed, and as you know, she lives in Claybanks. She said she drove into her house one day and this big orange thing's there, and she was pretty involved in the broadband there, right? So she's like, what is this? And so I think if. This just, we need to make it shorter, we need to make it 18 inches. And maybe 2 feet tall, it needs to be brown and black or.
Well, not just
Black and
they,
white
they
or-
need to make it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even,
Right, and it's Insight that's doing the work and it's Insight that's looking for the materials to do it. It's not Bertram, am I right? Just
5-star.
guessing, 5-star, not Insight, 5-star. They're the one that are looking for the materials.
I mean, these posts. And they're all falling over in Bailey's Harbor, so within a couple of years, the good news is they'll all be knocked over, people probably throw them in their garbage cans, but. I would challenge our supplier to find out if we really even need these. You know, could we use other service identification? Cause they're not that near the driveway.
Jess? Hey, Jess?
Yeah.
Um, thank you for giving us this info. Are they required to put these markers there? Is that like they have to do it? Forget about the size and the color.
Well, from the research that I did, it is, I'm sorry, there's so much backlight here for me. There is best practice and industry standard to mark where fiber is buried to prevent it being, hit, broken, any of those things like that. There's not a statute or legislation on what those have to, height, things like that. However, nationwide, Orange is specific to utilities. So whether that's electrical utilities, fiber utilities, broadband communications in general is supposed to be marked orange. So that anyone doing work in the right of way would know, hey, there's communications installed in the right of way that we don't want to hit.
Okay, thank you.
But isn't that the whole purpose of why you call Diggers Hotline?
If you call Digger's Hotline,
That's
yes.
because you have a 2-foot to a 5-foot pole saying that there's, utilities under here. You would know that if you call Diggers Hotline. And just because a post is there doesn't mean that somebody will call anyway.
True.
No, but there's also contact information on that call, so if someone does damage something, it's going to have information on who to call for that, because if you stop and look at one, like let's say on Highway 57 North, you may see it's Frontier or it's AT&T or it's Bertram. You're gonna have a couple of different companies there, and then you would at least know who to contact also. If something happened where there's no marker there, they have no idea whose infrastructure that is.
How many inches or feet or whatever does the flower pot come out of the ground?
Those are supposed to be kind of flush mount, so they're like kind of flush.
grade level.
But that's what this is marking, is the flower
Right.
pot, which is, and the fiber is under the flower pot.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, the fiber, if it's DOT, so state highway requires that to be buried below frost level.
Right, okay.
So it's pretty far down there. So that's DOT, but every county is gonna be a little bit different. They're gonna ask you to bury as deep as possible, and then your own permitting in the village would have its own zoning, asking for whatever that we sent out recommendations to last year.
I'd almost rather have wires hanging from a pole than that.
It's
Well,
bad.
we got those though.
Right?
We
Well-
got those too.
I have one in my backyard hanging from a tree. So at this point, I think we're just waiting to hear back from Bertram on what.
I mean, there's kind of, in my mind, nothing that's going to be acceptable.
We can go back to again and say we don't want anything. I'm fine with that. They want to run over my flower pot, they can. Kidding, but I don't want them to run over my flower pot. We can, so what do we think? Do we want nothing, or do we want like 2 feet brown and white?
If Google Fiber did all of Austin with these same flower pots and did no marketing.
Yeah, they do them in a lot of communities without markings because they're not allowed by the communities.
Yeah.
Code.
Okay, we want nothing.
Nothing.
You might have to
That's
pass,
easy. Then they
you
don't
might
have
have
to
to
even look, they
pass
don't
an
have to have the
ordinance.
expense of installing it.
Yeah, it should.
Well, right, because as you pointed out, Mike, in a couple of years, we can't even get,
Cable guys that take out all night.
WPS to straighten out every year that we
Yeah.
walk around the village.
Yeah.
All the green
Yeah.
thing, the
Yeah.
smaller ones,
Yeah.
not big metal ones, that are typical. Yeah, they can't even come and fix
He's
that.
right
They
though, 'cause
won't
I
let
drove
us
around
touch-
Bailey's to take pictures and they're all which ways. I took a picture, I did Cherrywood and superimposed the orange ones on Cherrywood. It's real pretty. So,
The ones that are the most obvious are the old telephone boxes that are all busted up, and I don't think they'll never remove them. The GTE ones, I think they are,
From the eighties.
they're busted up, I mean,
no
they're
one's ever come
there,
remove them. They don't work there anymore.
they're there.
I couldn't
No.
do it.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't bring this up, but I have on my Bailey's property, I have a telephone pole that I asked them to take down, and they basically told me, no, we can't take it down, but you can.
Oh, thanks.
So Kurt, you could probably take that out yourself if you get permission.
By, Orchard Point.
I'll pass that information on to Julie. Staff reports, okay, so we are now on to the walking tour. So we are going to,
Before you get
sorry,
into
sorry
that,
about that, yeah,
I really think that it's imperative that our administrator be here.
I would agree. Yeah, I thought about that on my way over, that Julie
So-
needs to be a part of it.
I would like to ask that we postpone for a month. Or we have a special meeting just to do the tour so we do not feel rushed.
I'm fine with that, because also some of this, like the e-bike setbacks and things like that, she'll have some information maybe we don't have. I mean, I always think I know what's there, but I don't. Is everybody in agreement?
Yeah, I think it's good to have the administrator along because a lot of the feedback that we give gets translated into notes for the future.
And Heidi didn't wear the right shoes today, she told me.
Heidi, I wasn't
expecting
expecting.
to have to walk on the.
What, you
tour
were
today.
heels? You got heels in?
It is, oh, there's Eric. Can I ask Eric a question?
No.
Okay.
Way too many questions. You are over your questions.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll ask you
him.
later.
Go ahead and ask.
So we made that deal with Marina View to turn that curb into.
Yeah,
parking
traditional
spot.
curb and gutter.
So we're gonna, and do we do that work or does the state do that work because it's a state highway?
We do it.
Okay. Is there a timeline for that? I'm just curious.
JF won the bid. I was hoping they were already started.
Okay,
Cause I kind of gave them a timeline. Mid-May is like the latest I want them. to do
okay.
anything.
I noticed it yesterday when I was going by there. I was curious.
Yeah, we had a question after you left, and thank you for coming back, about soil borings out. Like,
Oh,
why
yeah.
are they hitting all the bedrock over there, out there that?
The contractor is just as surprised too. They don't really can't understand why those tests weren't showing more of a rock.
So
So
there
there
were-
were soil borings done.
Yes,
How deep did they go?
I think
Yeah.
he said they were around 10 feet.
That's where they hit it,
Yeah,
So,
not deep enough.
I don't think they went deep enough.
wow, okay.
And who's doing the excavations at?
Great Lakes,
Great Lake, oh,
All right, so I just, they're not, for sure not gonna have water, right? But they could,
no water.
Yeah.
I went and checked it out again today. We got the sprinkler systems up to roll the fields for the baseball teams today.
great,
So that was a big win.
yep.
But then I went and I checked the laterals, the sewer lateral and the water lateral going down the concession, that's still cut in half, so.
Okay.
We can't even get the water on, and I don't know when, cause all the timeframes have been totally now put out of whack now with this rock. They literally went from the entrance to the overflow parking all the way up to the batting cage in a day. They are now doing about 2 to 3 sticks of pipe a day now with that rock.
Wow.
How much further do they have to go?
They are right at the bathrooms.
Okay.
Oh, so right where that congestion is, that choke
Yeah.
point. So, which too, we had ended up, cause they can't maneuver the rock grinder the way they can with the other buckets to remove the soil. They had to go straight at the trench. So we lost a bit of sidewalk right there. And they also had to cut that pad that had that bench on it, cause they gotta keep the excavator straight, you know. It's just when you're doing projects, that's what happens, so.
Do you think the parking for the bays in their parking lot will be available on Sunday?
He is going to do everything he can to
Okay.
keep it somewhat maneuverable in there.
Okay. If it
Just
doesn't rain, we should be okay, right?
baseball people, I've talked to the Little League team already moved their game to Egg Harbor, which I think was a fantastic idea.
Great. Okay,
And the bays, I'm just preaching, just be cautious, guys.
Yeah.
It's a minefield out there to navigate. And
well, do you
even-
think we should close the parking lot where, the ice rink is? Because people can't walk through from there, right?
depending on what it's gonna be looking like Friday, I think that might be a possible, we might have to.
Well, then do it, but just give Jeff or somebody a heads up.
Yeah, I can do
Because,
that.
when I was telling everybody, when I went through, now that's yesterday. You know, there's no way you could walk through there,
No,
especially with a kid.
absolutely.
Or even in the mud, or just in those two big pieces of equipment and stuff, so, okay. All right, just as long as the base know, they just, they're like, oh, it'll be fine, I'm like, well, a lot of stuff there, so,
It's pretty hazardous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. All right. All right, so, let's see, items, for, future agenda would be the walk around, it would also be, night sky lighting, I believe, yes, and also the revisit the, lease agreement with Friends of the Ice Rink.
And if it's possible to have a special session for walk around. If
Sure.
we could do it sooner rather than later, that would be good, but
Okay.
I know that's probably a headache for Heidi and et cetera. Schedule.
I mean, we can try to come up with, sometimes,
Just if you could
well, sometimes if
relay
we're
that
all in the same
recommendation.
room, we can try to figure out a date that would work with everybody, we can do that now if you want.
Well, I think we need to know Julie's schedule, well, that's
Yeah.
why I was saying we relay
She's
that to
feeling
her
better.
and then.
Okay, special meeting, is everybody in agreement on special meeting?
Sure.
Okay,
Is there
Can we
any
pick a
times
nice
that
day?
don't work that I should mark down? So that she knows to stay away from,
I mean, I think we meet on Mondays,
keep it on a Monday.
keep it on a Monday, and
Yeah.
if we can we meet earlier?
Sure.
So we don't
earlier would be better, yeah,
keep staff.
yep, earlier is better.
How early can you guys meet?
8 AM.
Depends on what's going on at work that day.
1 o'clock.
They're pretty flexible.
Yeah. Next Monday at
I
1.
mean, I open,
The
so I
following
can't
Monday at
do
1.
8 AM, still working.
The next 3 Mondays, you guys, at 1 PM, does that work for you? In case Julie can do those?
Depends, don't schedule around me, like.
Okay.
Fixed date and I'll do my best to make it work.
Alright. Okay, let's do this. Okay, the next regular monthly meeting will be June 2nd, 2024, 5 at 2:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So.
Are we,
Oh,
so our committees changed a little bit. Is 2:30 still the earliest that we can meet?
I can meet earlier.
I'd rather do one if we can, but
I'm-
anytime.
I can,
2? Maybe not one.
I can try to make it work.
Oh, it
1 or
was you,
2?
Jerry? Okay.
Still have to work full time during middle part of the day.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, my boss is flexible at times.
Mine's somewhat, he hasn't complained too much yet.
All right, 1:30?
Yeah, we could try.
Or 2 o'clock, even just a half hour.
No, I mean, if 1:30 works better, I can try.
Okay, right, so 1:30, and then if it doesn't work, we'll fuss with it. Okay?
And I'll probably be late because I never pay attention to the heading on the agenda. And I will have forgotten a whole month from now.
We'll have her do it in red.
It's still, I pay no attention.
So, okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you guys.